So a couple weeks ago, I was out in the field and I was shooting during migration, and I was in the one of the fields that I shoot, the flowering fields. Lots of just dense stuff in this particular field, and there were some hummingbirds in the area, so it was kind of neat. They were migrating, and they were popping into some nectar patches, and I was able to get this one that I kind of liked, but had a major issue. And you could see right here, the bill was obscured by this this stem, this stalk from one of the plants. So, this is something that I've done before where you'll see I have two images up here. One, I've got the tip of the bill obstructed, and then, maybe the wind blew or something happened, and then another part of the bill was obstructed. But I liked the one that had like a sharper and better eye. So this is the one I like the pose better. And the thinking is I'll take the tip of one bill and just replace it from another. So you could do this in several different applications. There are times when a stick might be going through the body of a bird, and maybe it's, kind of like moving back and forth, and it's up at the top on one frame and down at the bottom of another. And you just take the best parts of both of those images. So instead of trying to like clone out the stick, you actually just replace the part of the bird that works. So in this case, if I was to take the tip of the bill from the frame that worked and replace it, I just have to make sure I match it up and get it even, and and hopefully it will work. So you'll see when I do this, there's a couple things that'll happen. So it's a little bit of the stick removal. I'll get rid of these other sticks as part of this edit, and what I'll end up with is just a clean hummingbird with a bill that works, and then that little cluster of plants, which I don't mind at all. I think it kind of frames it, almost looks like he's sitting inside that foreground out of focus. I'll leave that in the final edit as well. So just make some standard adjustments here, and notice I select both images at the same time because I'm going to be using both parts of both images. I want them as close as possible. So I'm going to do these, these standard global edits in Camera Raw, or again, if you're using Lightroom, that's fine too. And notice I brought both images into Camera Raw at the same time. I have them both selected, and I'm making both adjustments. Now, if you do things like a touch-up in here, it will only do it to one. So if I use the brush, the adjustment brush, and bring it in here and start changing, it's only going to change the image that's selected. It's not going to do it to both. But if I select both images and make global adjustments, it will make both adjustments together. So do a little bit more touch up, see if I can get these guys, both the same, and then I'll bring it in here. That's an image I shot before. This little blue, black-throated blue with the berries. All right. So you can see I opened it up now, and I've got just the one with the tip, the tip of the bill that's a little bit better. So there it is. And I'm just going to copy that part. So I'm going to come over here, select generously around the bill, copy it, bring it over to the other image, and paste it. So now I've got two different things. I've got the base layer from the image I want, plus the tip of the bill that I'm kind of stealing from another frame. And now I've lowered the opacity here, and you could see me trying to line it up. So I'm going to try to get the tip and the angle all the same. And you'll notice even frame to frame, and this was only, quarters of seconds apart, there was some slight change in position. So I'm going to use Edit, Transform, Free Transform, or Control T. So now I can manipulate this little copy and paste section and line it up like I want. So you can see me rotating it here. I can move it left or right. I could even stretch it. I could make it wider or shorter or taller, but since the angle is really all I'm after, you can see me just adjusting it, and I'm using that opacity at, I turned it down so I can see through the layer. And now you'll see that little stalk that was going through is going to be a little bit better positioned. So I'm going to have to still play around with this, but once I get the tips of the bills lined up, I'll have to use some masks and turn those masks on and off so that I can get it where I want. And I may have to do a little bit of cloning on top of this, but the goal was to try to eliminate the cloning and get it as natural as possible. So you can see I put my mask on, and here I'm removing and there's a little bit of overlap. So from one frame to the other, there was just a little bit of overlap. That we can clean up. That'll be easier to clean up than trying to replicate and bring in that whole bill. So there, I just around the edge. I'll have to clone some of that stuff out later. But that's the part right there. I'm just going to have to work as fine as I can with this mask and just refine it so I can get just a little bit, like again, there's just a little bit of overlap there. And you can see me changing black to white here to refine the mask and get it to where I want it to be. Once I do that, I may have to, I'm going to have to, it looks like it might be a little bit off still. So I'm just going to rotate it a hair more so that when I zoom in, that bill lines up better. And now I'm just physically moving the whole bill. So trying to get it, to line up so that it looks natural and close to where it was. And one of the things when you toggle on, look at the tip of the bill. It's sharp in the one that I didn't want, and it's a little out of focus in the other one. And that's okay. It's not, I mean, I'm zoomed in here a billion. But if I wanted to, you could see me trying to like steal parts of the sharp bill. It's just not going to work because I have that that stick that's in front of it. So again, I'm just trying to line it up, trying to make it look natural, trying to get the angle right. And trying to take the best part of that bill that I can find. There it is. Yeah, and you can see I just don't have a lot of that tip to work with, so it is sharper, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the one that's a little bit more out of focus through the whole image. And the rest of this really just becomes, now that I've lined those up, and I've done the best I can to mask out the parts I want, the rest now is just going to be cloning it and trying to get it right in the clone. The other part that's going to come into play later is you're going to see that one of the bills was a little more out of focus than the other. So I'll come back at the end and I'll probably have to do a little bit to blend those in. But we'll get to that at the end. All right, so I'm pretty confident here that I've got the two that I want. So in order to clone this, to me, the best way to do this, I'm going to put the layer on top. So you can see I created a new layer on top. And I'm going to work a real small brush here. And I'm sampling the edge and then up. And then I'm sampling the edge from the other side and then going up. And that should give me a pretty good clone over that one section where it was overlapped. So I started from the left and sampled, then I went over to the right and sampled, and I always line up those edges when I'm working with something like this, and then kind of start at the edge and then pull it down. And then here's the same thing. I'm going to start at the other side. Let's see if I can find an area that works. It looks like there's this little part of the bill. You can see that little change. So I can't use it in a straight line. So what I did is I took the clone tool and I angled it a little bit. So now whatever I copy is going to be a little bit of an angle. And it goes clockwise or counterclockwise. So in this case, I think I'm going to have to use counterclockwise just a little bit. And now that makes it look a little more natural. Like that angle was a little bit better than it was before. There. So now I'm getting in real tight, real small brushes, and I get rid of that part that's on the bill. So just sampling part of the bill and overdoing it. And again, you can see a little bit of difference in the tip is now a little bit more out of focus. So I'm going to try to blend it in a little bit now, taking some of the in focus and out of focus areas and just overlapping them with the clone tool. So I'm going to carry over a little bit of that out of focus part onto the in focus part and then work back and forth. So again, I've got in focus and out of focus. I'm taking a little bit of this clone and overdoing it, and then a little bit of this and overdoing it. And I'm doing it at a little bit lighter opacity. So I'm not doing it 100% now anymore. I'm trying to get those to blend in. So now I got that edge, pretty well cleaned up. The rest of the cloning is pretty easy here. This one shouldn't be too tough. Once I get rid of that, once I get the bill figured out, the rest should be pretty easy. So now I'll just take some samples, go back up 100%, and now I'll just clone out the stuff I don't want. I'm going to get these edges first. Anything near the bill, I'll try to clean all this up first, and then I can use a bigger brush and do it a little bit with broader strokes. That area over the head, that's another one, since the branch is coming right out of the head. Since I've already started to manipulate this, I'm just going to go ahead and clean all of the branches up. So I'll clean up that branch that's coming out of his head, as well as this branch here. All right, so I just kind of fast forwarded to spare you the tediousness of me editing out the rest of that, because this was really about using the 2 frames and combining it into one image, taking the best parts of the bill. So that's kind of what I ended up with. So when I come out here and I finish cloning out those sticks, now I've got a pretty clean image. The hummingbird sitting in there. The scene is just as it was. It's digital manipulation for sure, but it's the integrity of the scene to me is the same. So this is something that I don't mind posting or sharing. Now what I'm going to do is just merge those layers down together so I have one flat layer to work with again. And now I can if I need to take it back to camera raw, I can take it back to camera raw. There are going to be times when you may not want to merge those layers down, so you can also take advantage of grouping layers. So you take a bunch of layers and group them together, and then copy the group, and then merge one of the groups. So you're protecting one of the groups. It's got all those layers in it, and then the top layer, you're going to duplicate it and merge it down so you can do, if you need to kick it back to camera raw. So here I'm going to kick it back to camera raw, see if I need to do any final adjustments. You could see I went with a horizontal, or I'm rather a vertical crop from the horizontal. So having a high pixel camera really allows you to do this without paying a significant penalty. If you've got a low pixel camera, it can be pretty tough to crop to vertical from horizontal. You lose a lot of pixels. So there's a couple of touch-ups. You can see I brightened the top left a little bit, added a little bit of warmth up there. And I'm going to just check out the bill now. And here's the detail part I showed you before. You could see the left side of the bill is a little more out of focus than the right side. So the choice, it's always harder to take out of focus and make it look in focus. It's much easier to take in focus and make it look out of focus. So what I'm going to do to blend that together, I'm going to take the part of the bill that's in focus and I'm going to blur it a little bit. And then I'm going to blend the layers. So right there, I copied that layer with a mask. So you could see that layer's copied. And I blurred it out. To blur, you simply go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then you choose, a numeric value that does what you want it to do. So by doing that, I just softened up the bill, and now I'm going to mask in that soft area that was sharp. So it's not something you normally do, is taking sharp areas and making them less sharp, but figured I would show you how I would do this since it was part of the edit, and I would want to blend that in. And I would do it carefully. I would do it slowly so that there were some sharp and then it gradually fades into blur. And there you'll see the before and after. So hopefully that made sense why I did it and also how I did it. Gaussian blur is a pretty powerful tool. People use it a lot. You can use it to blur backgrounds. I will tell you, I don't do that almost ever. I can't say I've never done it, but there are people who will take that Gaussian blur and blur out the entire background and make it look like it's out of focus, and then they'll mask the bird or subject back in very carefully. So that is a popular technique with a few photographers, but just full disclosure, it's not something I really do much of at all. So now I balanced that all out. I've got my final image here. I think it's a pretty image. It stands out. That's the original without, not the original, that's the adjustments I made before Camera Raw. And then I'll pull up the big image here, so I'll get it off this video screen. And there's the final edit. That's the one I'll share on social media. And hope you enjoyed the video. You saw basically the technique that you can use anytime there's an object running through your subject. If the subject moved a little or the object moved a little, take a part that works. And it's also common, sometimes you'll get like a stick that comes across the breast. You could find a part where that stick is in a different spot and then use this same technique to combine that. So hopefully you found this interesting. Hope everybody's having a great day, and I will talk to you soon.